Welcome everyone to our presentation. I am Baba Jiwe, and I am the coordinator of the New York State Coordinating Committee of the Pan-African Federalist Movement. I'm located in New York City, and our committee has the responsibility of mobilizing some 3.1 Africans in New York State to join and support the movement for the creation of the United African States. Our New York State Coordinating Committee was started in March of 2019. I had the pleasure of meeting Brother Jiwe Faye at that time, and Brother Jiwe Faye introduced me to the Pan-African Federalist Movement, of which Brother Jiwe is actually one of the originators of the Pan-African Federalist Movement. So he was involved in the original meeting in Dakar, Senegal in 2015 that established the first attempt to consider starting a movement for the unification of Africa into what we are calling the United African States. The Pan-African Federalist Movement was chartered and marching orders given in December of 2018. And the movement is an international movement and is structurally set up to operate in 9 regions. There are 5 regions of influence in the continent of Africa, and there are 4 regions of influence in the diaspora. One region is the Caribbean islands. The 7th region is North America and Canada. The 8th region is Latin America, and the 9th region is Europe, including the United Kingdom. So it is an international movement. Now, what is the Pan-African Federalist Movement? All right. Pan-African Federalist Movement is being built around the call for the first Pan-African Federalist Congress. It's a grassroots coalition of organizations and individuals for the political unification of the states on the continent of Africa and those in the Caribbean and the diaspora, where the majority of citizens are of African descent. Our approach is a bottom-up approach, and this process also is inclusive of the millions of Black people, as I said, in North America, Latin America, Europe, and Asia, who are descendants of enslaved Africans or Africans who have voluntarily migrated to these areas but are minorities in their states. So here in New York State, we represent one of the groups of Africans who are in the diaspora, and we are also a minority of the population in our state of residence and in our country of residence. So we have a particular interest and stake in being present when the first pre-Congress is held to discuss the formation of a constitution for the United African States. We have a state. Our mission as a New York State committee is to mobilize, as I said, is to mobilize people in New York State in support of the UAS. And that basically is what the Pan-African Federalist Movement is about. Now, how important is the involvement of Africans in the diaspora to the Pan-African Federalist Movement? Well, if we just take a brief review of history, we find numerous occasions where Africans and people of African descent have been integrally involved in the liberation and unification movement. We can go back to the 1700s when there have been revolutions against slavery. Even from its very earliest days of slavery, there were slave rebellions on the ships that were involved in the Middle Passage. So revolt and revolution against the domination of the Europeans has always been present and continues to be present to this day. All right. We can go back to a brief review of history of Maroon revolts in Jamaica in 1728, 1795 against the English, the Haitian Revolution in 1791 against France, the Busa Rebellion in Barbados in 1816 against England, the Mau Mau Revolt in Kenya, 1952 against England, and the Southwest African People's Organization Revolution in 1966 against apartheid in South Africa, just to name a few. The abolition of the African slave trade in 1865 then catalyzed the involvement of a growing cadre of Black critical thinkers, scholars, and politically enslaved Africans, vigorously promoting Black nationalism. W.E.B. Du Bois, who was born in Massachusetts in the United States, strongly promoted a Pan-African philosophy. Marcus Garvey, born in Jamaica, West Indies, mobilized an international return to Africa movement with the UNIA from 1919 to 1926. Between 1900 and 1974, 6 Pan-African congresses were organized by various Pan-Africanists in the diaspora. And this brought together African delegates, intellectuals, and activists to explore methodologies to eliminate European colonization in Africa. In 1963, 32 African member states formed the Organization of African Unity. In 1964, Malcolm X and historian John Henrik Clarke founded the Organization of Afro-American Unity to unify African Americans and establish ties with the OAU. In 2002, 55 African member states formed the African Union, which replaced the OAU. So as the struggle continues, we in the Pan-African Federalist movement believe that the future survival and sovereignty of Africa critically depends on the effective integration and coordination of all the strengths of Africans in Africa and Africans in the diaspora to bring about one African national government run by Africans for the well-being of Africans. And this, in a nutshell, is what the Pan-African Federalist movement is about. Now, I'm very fortunate to have along with me 2 of our New York State Coordinating Committee members, Sister Aisha Farley and Brother Nehemiel Sims, who we affectionately call Nemo. And they are also going to be presenting in our discussion here today. Sister Aisha, she is a coordinator of our Women's Mobilization Commission. And Brother Nemo is the deputy coordinator of our Youth Mobilization Commission. These are 2 of our most important commissions in the committee. Now, we have other commissions that deal with such matters as finance and public relations and the like. But these are 2 people that I wanted to have as a part of our presentation, just to show you the quality of what we are doing here in the diaspora as Africans. So, Sister Aisha,
yes,
I would like to save your presentation, if you will allow me. I would like to save your presentation to the end and let Brother Nemo do his presentation first, and then you can wrap up for us. Is that
sure.
okay? All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
All right, Brother Nemo, I'd like to just give you the floor now and let you drop some wisdom on us.
Oh man, thank you, Baba Jiwe. Thank you, Sister Aisha. I just want to recognize Baba Jiwe's leadership in keeping the coordinating committee together. I also want to recognize Baba Jumai and Baba Asukile, who also play really important mentorship and leadership roles in this organization. So I'm just going to get straight to my presentation, which is based around the question, what is the role of diasporic Africans in the liberation of Africa? So today we are at a crossroads of destiny, the race. And one road leads to another 1,000 years of suffering, and the other road leads to another 1,000 years of development and prosperity. The Pan-African Federalist movement and many other movements have chosen the latter. Our success in this campaign, which is the vehicle for the creation of the United African States, is based on the ability of our organizations to effectively invest in young African people and endow them with the vision, tools, and example that will lead to a successful African state. Nkrumah wrote, "The duty of any worthwhile colonial movement for national liberation must be the organization of labor and youth and the abolition of political illiteracy." So our job is to implant within the youth a Pan-Africanist consciousness, develop their political acumen, and develop their direct politico-economic connection with the African continent so as to mutually mature both diasporic communities and continental communities. The role of the diaspora. Diasporic Africans have a very crucial role to play in the development and decolonization of the continent. Diasporic Africans can promote trade and direct foreign investment, develop industry, and spur entrepreneurship, transfer new knowledge and skills, develop relationships where we can use the natural resources of the continent to develop the African diaspora and create a worldwide unified African consciousness that will be the cultural basis for our political unification of African states. The African diaspora is the worldwide collection of communities descended from native Africans or people from Africa. Diaspora can be defined as the movement, migration, or scattering of a people away from an established or ancestral home. The African Union estimates that the African diaspora is about 112.6 million people scattered around South America, such countries as Brazil, Colombia, and Venezuela, 39.2 million people in North America, in the United States and Mexico and Canada, and 13.5 million people in the Caribbean. According to the World Bank, the African diaspora is approximated to be 140 million people in the Western Hemisphere, with a large percentage of Africa's brain drain going to the United States and Canada. In 2012, the African diaspora was at 38 million people in the United States, which was 12% of the total American population. Now it is over 46 million people.
Mhm.
In Harlem on 116th Street, there is a hub of African commerce that has existed for many years. Goods are imported from the continent and exchanged here in New York. Culture is diffused, relationships are made. Similar markets exist all around New York and all around the diaspora. The existence of these markets represents the potential for greater socioeconomic development of vitally needed ties between diasporic Africans and continental Africans. Many Africans have emigrated to various communities within the diaspora, bringing their expertise in such fields as engineering, medicine, law, and education. The African Union estimates that about 70,000 skilled professionals emigrate from Africa every year. Conversely, many diasporic Africans are emigrating to the continent for the purpose of establishing mutual trade relationships, and therefore represents the potential for greater socioeconomic integration between diasporic communities and the communities existing on the continent. African immigrants in this country, America, boast some of the highest educational attainments of any immigrant group, and there are now more than 250,000 scientists and physicians of African descent in the United States. African governments have to put in place good economic policies in order to attract investment within their countries. Not only that, but they also have to put in place policies and initiatives that will attract their diaspora to invest in their respective countries. An example of such an initiative would be Ghana's Year of the Return initiative. This initiative was put in place by the Ghanaian government to increase tourism within their country, and that's exactly what the initiative did. The number of foreigners visiting the country increased, and the initiative attracted a lot of media attention to the country. Investing in social entrepreneurship within the continent and also creating such companies within the continent is also another area for the diaspora to help African economies achieve structural transformation. Africans within America. Let's talk about America very quickly. The principal source of powerlessness of the African American community is its refusal to conceptually and socially utilize the perception of itself as a nation within a nation. The Africans within the diaspora, specifically within the United States of America, must develop a sense of nationhood, using this to develop themselves within the area in which they live. Only then can we diasporic Africans make sustained and consequential political economic investments in the continent. The powerlessness of the African American community is not due to its paucity of human resources. It is due rather to its lack of efficient organizing, coordinated development, and application under the influence and guidance of a deep sense of nationhood, national purpose, and destiny. And in closing, there exist too many nonsensical and unfounded stereotypes and misconceptions between continental and diasporic Africans, aided by the propaganda campaigns of our enemies to keep us divided. Travel agencies that promote affordable travel to the continent will help increase visibility between the two groups and remedy the misunderstandings. Culturally speaking, Afrobeat and hip hop have begun to interact, have begun to merge. This meeting between the two popular cultures sets the stage for wider dialogue and unity between continental and diasporic Africans.
Awesome. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Brother Nemo. Awesome, brother. You give me great inspiration that you guys are going to be able to take over when we move on to the ancestral realm. Gives me a good feeling to know that we got the youth like you backing us up. Thank you, Brother Nemo.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now I would like to introduce our sister, Sister Aisha. I must tell you, my original plan was to have Sister Aisha speak first, but she requested that she be the last speaker on the panel, and I honored that request. So Sister Aisha.
I appreciate that, Baba Jiwe. And thank you, Brother Nile. Brother Nemo, for that amazing presentation. Baba Jiwe, thank you for your guidance and your leadership on the committee. And thank you, an extended thank you to Baba Jumai for his efforts and his work to bring the PAFM into fruition. Greetings, peace, assalamu alaikum, free the land. Brothers and sisters, it is a great honor to be with you on this day during this critical time to discuss the call. My name is Aisha Hanifa Abiola Shinieri Amatullah Samad, and I'm the chair of the Women's Committee for the New York chapter of the Pan-African Federalist Movement. Before I go on, I would like to take a moment to presence the ancestors to whom we owe our lives, on whose shoulders we stand. And in gratitude, we pay homage to their sacrifices, blood, sweat, and tears, and their continued guidance as we navigate this space and time. Ashe. The call that I'm referencing is universal. It is ancient. It is transnational. It supersedes national borders, space, and time. Brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora, although we speak many different languages, our great mother Africa speaks to us in a voice that we all recognize, and she is calling us home. This is a call for African unity. As a daughter of the diaspora, I, like many of the sons and daughters of the First Nation who have been dispersed throughout the world, have a deep longing, which can sometimes present itself as curiosity, can often be described as a feeling of being lost in the world, and sometimes can even be described as homesickness. We who have been robbed of knowing our language, ancestry, and heritage carry a deep wound. Our proverbial umbilical cord has been severed, and we have lost our mother, our home country. We, the children of the Ma'afa, long for a connection and to be reconnected to our first home and our brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora, abroad, and on the continent. The Pan-African Federalist Movement presents us with a unique opportunity to answer this ancient call. The need to connect our struggle in the United States with our brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora is at hand now. Global and ecological crisis coupled with imperialism, neocolonialist, and white supremacist agendas are attempting to turn back the work of our ancestors. The most devastating aspect of these matrices and the systems of oppression is that the oppressed are bombarded with the onslaught of daily crisis that one cannot even begin to imagine defeating any or all of these systems. In addition, there has yet to be an agenda that has been put forth that seeks to reconnect the dispersed Africans throughout the diaspora with the Africans on the continent. The Pan-African Federalist Movement identifies our interdependence as brothers and sisters as a matter of utmost urgency for Africans on the continent and for Africans throughout the diaspora. And it is seeking to answer the call through the political unification of Africa. Brothers and sisters, the veil has been lifted, and many of our brothers and sisters throughout the diaspora are waking up to the reality that if we want to control our destiny, we have to be involved in creating it. We can no longer sit back and wait. The future is at stake now, and we as the people of the diaspora will continue to work for our ancestors we'll continue the work of our ancestors by using what is available to us now. In the words of Kwame Nkrumah, we must find an African solution to our problems, and that is the only, and that can only be found in African unity. Divided, we are weak. United, Africa could be one of the greatest force for good in all the world. And so, brothers and sisters, we continue in spite of the carnage with the understanding that our ancestors are available and with us right now. And they are waiting for us to recognize that we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We welcome you to the movement, towards the political unification of Africa and joining us in the Pan-Africanist Federalist movement as we work to build a campaign for the United African States.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Aisha. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I'm putting in the chat now.
Beautiful.
For those of you who are interested in getting some additional information on our movement and possibly getting involved with our movement, I am giving you my telephone number. You can call me directly. And we do have some social media set up, which is in the process of being launched. One of my other youth coordinators, Brother Nile, is actually our media person, and he is now in the process of establishing our social media networks. So that's something that will be available very soon. But for the time being, just give me a call. I would appreciate it. I'm also giving you my email if you want to email me, and I can send you some other information regarding our movement.
I think that we can look at the question and answers.
Yeah. Now, so far, I just saw that one question about the social media. Do you have any other questions in our chat room?
Excuse me.
We do have time for some questions. If there are any of you that would like to extend this discussion or presentation, I think I added that Brother Jemai, and he mentioned this in his presentation, he lives in Jersey. So Brother Jemai is actually on our committee, which we're very fortunate to have the originator of the Pan-African Federalist movement as a part of our committee. This is a very helpful and valuable component of what we're doing. So I would just like to thank Brother Jemai for his work and inspiration in this movement that we're involved with.
Robert, there's a question.
Okay.
It says it's directed towards me.
Okay, feel free.
It says, do you believe the youth is disconnected and associating themselves with Africa? Why or why not? Some. I would say the majority I'm 23, the majority of the young people I know, overwhelming majority are Afrocentric and actively studying what that means. So I think the majority of the youth are, they have their stuff together, trying to. As far as Africa.
I'd like to respond to that question too as well. From working with Brother Nemo, I have seen that he is a very unique young brother in that he is totally committed to this struggle that we're involved with on several levels. You know, he's very actively involved in teaching our youth and teaching our youth our culture, our history, and he alone is a very knowledgeable and I think exceptional young brother for his age. Also, he travels in circles. You know, people of like minds tend to travel together. So he is also connected with some other quite conscious young brothers, and some even younger than him.
And sisters.
So, you know, so Brother Nemo is doing some good work with our youth, and I look forward to, you know, doing more great things with Brother Nemo. Him and Brother Nile instituted a block cleanup program, which is one thing that we have been doing to build some visibility and credibility in the community. So we have a scheduled cleanup day on a Saturday morning where we just meet on one of the most busy business strips in Brooklyn, Utica Avenue. And we come out with brushes and shovels and bags, and we just do a nice cleanup sweep on the block. And we've gotten some interest from the community businesses along that strip because of that presence. So this is the kind of initiative that our youth, you know, are trying to institute just to get more youth involved, and it's working.
I was going to say, I do have a response to that. Thank you, Brother Jamal, for that important question. But the question of whether or not I believe that the youth are disconnected, for me, it's a question of consciousness. And so we talked about, Nemo talked about Pan-African consciousness, or consciousness in general of the interconnectedness of the Pan-African struggle, or connecting the Black community with the African, with Africans in the continent. And so what I think is that, you know, our youth right now are bombarded with social media and a milieu of different distractions. And so I think that there has been some difficulty in having the youth associate or be connected with the struggle in Africa. But the job of the PAFM that we're taking, the actual task that we're taking on, is politically educating. So brothers and sisters in New York State and throughout the diaspora in this country are able to see the connection and how we are interdependent on each other in terms of the in terms of our own liberation struggle. So it's important that we do recognize that, you know, as time goes on, we know that the education system is set up where we're naturally taught to hate ourselves. And so we can go back and look at the history and recognize that there's a need for conscious effort to continue to not entertain, but interact with our youth and be in conversation with them about the international struggle, about Pan-African unity, and about understanding who they are as Africans in this country and what role that they play and they could possibly play in the liberation struggle. But, you know, that was a critical question. And I think that it's something that's an ongoing struggle, but the PAFM is taking on the task of that work.
Yeah. Yes.
And Brother Nemo touched on something too when he was speaking about this development in the hip hop industry, for example, how Afro pop and hip hop are interfacing and exchanging and creating a whole new realm of possibilities in terms of you know, developing our youth and developing their involvement throughout the world. This, I think, is necessary because, you know, we're in a different time now. We're we're in a time now where, because of the technologies, for example, the technologies of the last 20 years are revolutionizing so many of the ways that people interact. And this is something where, again, I think the youth have much more of a hand on the pulse of the technology and are able to utilize it to further the struggle, so that's another asset that I clearly see among our youth. They're very adept and very knowledgeable about the technology, the phones and the social media, and this is something that we can't get away from, the fact that we need to utilize this technology to further this movement.
Robert,
I see another question. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you. I wanted to a brother asked a question. He said, what are some things we can do for more cooperation among Pan-African organizations? And that's the thing I'm trying to actively figure out in building a coalition, or being an organizer in building a coalition. That's the question where I'm at right now. Like, what can there's a lot of African-centered institutions, there's a lot of Pan-African institutions and a lot of Pan-African organizations, but how do we transfer that to political power and economic power? And a committee has sprung up with the idea of engaging the community and all the, specifically like Brooklyn, New York, engaging the community and all of the Pan-African organizations in the community to, one, rally around the youth in a youth showcase of talent, and then two, to fundraise for independent African educational institutions, because we believe that the first investment that needs to be made in the liberation of our people is in the liberation of their education. That is the very first investment that needs to be made. So we are fundraising $50,000 for independent African education, and the event is going to be September 10th in Von King Park in Brooklyn. So that's the solution that I came to. Like, get all of these organizations to rally around like a specific goal, which would be the investment in education.
Well, there's one, I'd like to respond to that as well. There's one decision that we have made, and that is, now that the this COVID pandemic seems to be going away, or at least it's not controlling us to the extent that it has been over the last couple of years. So one of the things that we are planning to do this year is to set up face-to-face meetings with the leadership of other Pan-Africanist organizations, face-to-face meetings, because virtual meetings are great and they're convenient, but there's nothing that can replace a face-to-face, in-person meeting with someone when it comes to sharing ideas and brainstorming on some issues that are as important as the ones we're trying to deal with. So that's one approach: a direct face-to-face meetings with other organizations, and really exploring how we coexist, because it's nothing new to anybody. Divide and conquer. We have always been plagued with this issue of divide and conquer. So it's really important for us to address how we combat that. And the way to do it is to open up and show some love for the other brothers and sisters that are out there working for the same thing that we are. We may have different approaches. We may have different expectations. We may have different milestones, but the point is, we are all working for the same cause. So we should not be competing with each other. Rather, we should be supporting each other in our struggle. And so that's something I'm looking forward to actually pushing forward as we start to reach out to the other Pan-Africanist organizations and sit at the table and just talk. We had a good experience at the, there's a festival that took place over the 4th of July weekend, the International African Arts Festival. And we had a table set up at the event. And that was a great opportunity to meet up with some of the other organizations that are working for this decolonization and unification of Africa. So that was like a first step in really setting up some of the face-to-face meetings with these organizations.
I don't know if I have anything to add, Baba Jiwe, but the goal is to create a united front, and that includes all Pan-African organizations that, you know, are working towards our liberation. And so, like Baba Jiwe said, we really can't even afford to be focused on differences. We need to focus on what we have in common, and that we can't figure out if we can't agree on ideologies or how it's supposed to come about, or certain, we can't get into those politics, because those things are a way for us to remain stagnant, essentially, you know. So we need to focus on what can push us forward and continue to push towards the work that we're actually doing, which is actually ultimately the PAFM exists to create a coalition. And so we are creating, our attempt is to create a coalition through the PAFM to have a delegation to participate in the first African, in the Congress. So, you know, ultimately, like Baba Jiwe said, we are creating a united front, and then we are actually seeking out Pan-African organizations. And so we're not going to be distracted by differences. We're going to focus on what we have together, and we're going to collaborate to organize to bring about the change that we want to see.
Now, as a matter of fact, one of our rules of engagement in the Pan-African Federalist movement, and this has come down from the international level, from the International Preparatory Committee, and this is that the Pan-African Federalist movement is intentionally and consciously avoiding choosing sides. We're consciously trying to maintain a position of neutrality when it comes to interacting or commenting or trying to have anything to do with debates, for example, within potential member states that may be going through political issues, pros and cons. We intentionally do not involve ourselves as an organization in trying to have an input in the resolution of these types of disputes or conflicts. And by keeping our neutrality, we feel that's the best way of avoiding this divisiveness and problem that comes up when two organizations start going head to head.
Brother Jamal had a question. He says, does your organization plan on taking its member to the continent of Africa in the future? And the goal is yes. You know, we're planning to send a delegation. And so part of creating the coalition is so we can send delegates to Africa on the behalf of diasporic Africans from the United States. I see another question.
This is, what is that?
I can read it. I'll read the question. Do you want me to read it? Do we need a movement in the United States, particularly about the importance of defining Black people as African people? For some reason, I don't believe it's clear. In fact, the ADOS movement growth and voice is creating confusion on the insistence of promoting the notion that the term African American is bogus, precisely because the term includes the word African. So the question again is, do we need a movement in the United States, particularly about the the importance of defining Black people as African people.
Can I respond to that very quickly?
Yeah.
I have two thoughts when it comes to that. I've been thinking about that. One, that's kind of like an internal dispute, an internal debate within a potential nation or nation state, which is the black people within America, right? A nation. And I think here is where the IPC's policy of non-interference would come in handy. Because I think at this point, in my opinion, at this point in 2022, that doesn't matter.
It's not relevant, really.
It's not relevant. And we know, come on, guys, this is 2022. We have years and years of history and counter-revolutionary work to study. Like, we know COINTELPRO is real. Why? Let's just focus on the work.
Right.
Whoever's ADOS, whatever, okay, non-interference.
As in terms of, and I have to agree, in terms of self-definition, that question in itself, it can be a little bit, it can create division. And so, like Nemo said, our focus is our sovereignty and our self-determination, and how you define yourself, whether as a Black or as an African people. For me, I use the terms often depending on, who I'm speaking with at any different point, but that doesn't mean that my consciousness is Black and my consciousness is African. My allegiance is African. My allegiance is to Blackness. So, I don't know if we need a movement at all in particular that talks about the important, not that it's not important, but I don't know if we need to have an entire movement around that. Because I think it's implicit specifically in our message.
I also think that our ancestors have answered a lot of these questions. Like Garvey said, why would I give up a continent for an island? The reason why I call myself an African is because the most consequential landmass on this earth is called Africa. That is the name of the landmass. And in order to identify myself with that landmass for various cultural and political reasons, I call myself an African. In my opinion, I think the conversation just stops there.
Say it louder. I didn't hear what you. Nima, what was the last thing you said? I
said I identify myself as an African,
right?
Because the continent the body is called Africa,
right?
So I'm identifying myself with the body.
I'm scrolling down.
Does anybody have any more questions?
African, yes. Let's our politics and culture speak for itself. Yeah. So, okay, I don't know if I see any more direct questions, but again, I use the terms interchangeably. As a person who studied Africana studies, both my degrees are in Black studies and Africana studies. So, I understand the importance of identifying when you're talking to specific communities where they're at, meet people where they're at. Especially when it comes to Africans and African Americans and Black people throughout the diaspora. It's a need to focus in on the things that we have in common, to bring about the conversations that are of critical importance. So, Baba Jiwe, did you have anything else to say?
Yes, I would just like to say that one of the fundamentals of the Pan-African Federalist movement is based on a definition of an African person. There is a certain list of its terminology that is is accepted within the fundamentals of the PAFM. And I will just read from that definition. An African person. The PAFM is in line with the description of the African person by Ali Mazrui. It is an individual who is either a citizen of a country located on the continent of Africa and the islands surrounding Africa, which by definition we say is an African of the soil, or a Black person anywhere in the world. And this is a African of the blood. So that's the ancestry, the descendants of Africans include that term, Black person, African of the blood, right? When it comes to the continent, the United African States will unify the state, all of the states, and everyone who is a citizen of that state then is considered an African, right? Any citizen. When we get into the diaspora, there needs to be a process whereby those countries that are populated predominantly by people of African descent, there needs to be a process whereby the people decide whether or not that particular country will in fact join the United African States. And that's a process that will depend very much on the country and the governmental structure of the country. It could be something that happens as a referendum, right? It could happen as a plebiscite. It could happen in whatever mechanical way that that country is set up for it to happen. In some cases, it may happen actually by revolution. That is a potential, right? But it would depend very much on which particular country is involved as to how the process of becoming a member of the United African States actually takes place. There's an international research and strategy committee that is directly involved with that process of meeting with heads of state, meeting with the various governments on the continent to engage in discussions as to how United African States can become a reality for their particular state. Right, so that's one of the items on the International Preparatories Committee's plate.
And I'll just add to the earlier question. I'm just going to add on what Brother Nemo said. Eventually, as we work in this movement towards shifting the consciousness around the African crisis, the Pan-African crisis that we're dealing with, then I feel personally that people will start identifying themselves as Africans and we'll drop the subtitle of American or drop the subtitle or drop the title of being Black. I think that will become natural as the evolution occurs in terms of this movement, in terms of educating and politically educating people on our interconnectedness and struggle. And so I think naturally is the way, in some regard, as the ways a lot of us who are on the scene have recognized the strength of calling yourself an African, that will naturally happen as we educate brothers and sisters on the struggle.
True.
Can I also can I say something?
Sure.
Can I speak? So yeah, I think I want to talk a little bit about what the New York State Coordinating Committee is doing and has done. Right, Sister Aisha and Baba Jiwe.
Yes. Go ahead, Nemo. Mhm.
So in the past meaning like last winter, we did about 6 cleanups on Utica Avenue. For those of you who are not from Brooklyn, Utica Avenue is a very important economic strip in Brooklyn of Black businesses. And the PAFM decided to lead cleanups along this strip for to have visibility in the community, but also to build relationships with these store owners and businesses. So that's one. 2, we recently had a open forum where we invited some African organizations to sit down in a dialogue. It was a success. We recently vended. Baba Jiwe held down the fort at the International African Arts Festival for 4 whole days. We got a lot of contacts. The New York State Coordinating Committee has also been in contact with the DC State Coordinating Committee and the Florida State Coordinating Committee in creating a program, not for membership, but for awareness, because we know that the PM's sole goal is to campaign for the United African States. So we've created, and there are a lot of things implicit in that. People have to know about Pan-Africanism. People have to know about Pan-African federalism. And so we've created a program that we're looking to implement. So please, if you guys, and we're not up here just talking either, like we really are trying to engage. So there's 25 people watching. Baba Jiwe put his cell phone number and his email in the chat, and Baba Asukile put his put the Instagram. That means that we should have 25 people looking to get involved. This is a very serious liberation movement, as Baba Jumai said. And we have a deadline. It's serious. You know it's serious because we have a deadline. 2030. The United African States has to be a thing by 2030. So we're moving. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. This is one of the criteria that we put forth with anyone who wants to get involved. They have to understand the urgency of this mission. You know, we don't have any time to lose, because if we don't do it now, as this convention is saying, right? Pan-African unity or perish. And this is a very serious reality that we're facing now. So we don't have time to play around. Well, thank you so much for that, Brother Nemo, Sister Aisha. This has been great. In spite of all the little technical difficulties that were messing with us up front, I was starting to think it was sabotage. But I don't think we're at that level yet.
Sorry, I didn't realize my mic wasn't on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Baba Jiwe. Thank you
The
all.
other thing that you know, this has been a very pleasant exchange, but just keep in mind that as it has been said, and I literally take this to heart, we are in a state of war and have been in a state of war for a long time. So, you know, while it's very nice to have a pleasant exchange, it's important to realize that there's a target on each one of our backs, and the enemy is going to do anything they can do to stop what we're trying to make happen, right? So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. I mean, in closing, I just want to say, you know, we're all that we have and we're all that we need. And so, you know, ultimately everybody that's in this conference should be joining the call, in my estimation, because we all have that goal in terms of uniting Africa for Pan-African unity. as the #1 goal in terms of all of our agendas. So at this point, everybody should be joining. And the goal, again, for the New York State Commission is to create a coalition so we can ultimately send delegates to represent us in Africa. There's another question here.
Medgar Evers College would be interested.
Yeah, awesome. We would love to come and present. If Mercer, I guess, contact, I'll put my information in the chat as well, that we can probably set up a session and come and speak at Medgar Evers. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Okay.
Okay. I am putting my info here. Give me a second. And
so we still got 10. Okay.
And then we're also working on setting up study groups in the fall. So we'll be having opportunities to invite much of the participants. So if you email me your information, I can add you to our email listserv. And when we start doing those, if you're in Brooklyn, in New York, you can come out to our study groups. Okay.
If you should get involved with our committee, the New York State Committee, we have a monthly meeting that's a standard meeting every month, the second Sunday of every month. And then other special meetings, depending on what kind of events we're planning, we have special meetings. But the one requirement, if you're going to become involved, you must attend our monthly meeting, unless you have some real a valid reason, and there are reasons why.
I
Family
see another question, again, addressing the Pan-African ideas. Again, it's a movement. And so our goal is to inform, educate, in addition to creating a coalition. And so we're working on building a movement around Pan-African unity. And so what that means is that we can't, again, be distracted by what is happening now. We can only look towards the future and participating in creating the solution. And so I think that a lot of times it gets, we always want to talk about, again, what is the current state of affairs. The current state of affairs at this moment is already past tense. The only way we can change the future is by actually proactively doing the work to change the consciousness of our people. And so again, yes, it may be a fact that Black people identify themselves or don't identify themselves as African. But as the movement shifts and the consciousness changes, and consciousness is real, and we know that from COVID, that awareness around certain subjects can spread very quickly. And so if we're doing the work, it'll be like wildfires and we can continue to fan the flame. But at the end of the day, we can't be distracted by what is not going on right now. We have to continue to look towards the future with the hope and the energy and the commitment to changing and being the change that we want to see.
Right.
And to add on to that, don't think of the United African States as something like this. Oh my God, that's so big. It's such a big term that it seems impractical and it can't be done in 2030. And the United African States, Diop and Nkrumah both said that it would begin with a block of a couple African states. And when this block of African states gets together, the rest of the African states are going to be like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that. Mm-hmm. So it's not this big, grandiose, impractical idea we are not the originators of this idea.
Right. Right.
We have examples to look to what to do, what worked and what not to work. Revolution is a science. You're going in a cycle. You're looking at what happened before. Right?
Exactly. And as I said before, right. And as I said in my speech earlier, what is happening right now is they're threatening to turn back the work of our ancestors. So we have to use what we have. And Baba Jiwe gave us a historical overview of what has actually occurred. And we're using that as a momentum in addition to what assets we have right now, which are technology, social media, and the time is now, you know, and so we can't give up the struggle based upon, you know, somebody wants to identify themselves and don't want to identify themselves as African. If they're African at heart and they want to join the movement and their intentions and their commitment is towards building the political unification of Africa, then join us.
And what gives me some optimism is that, you know, New York State, for example, there are some 3.1 million Africans in New York State. Over half of them are living in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. 60%, right? So we can focus our efforts in a relatively small radius. And it would be great to think that we could mobilize 3.1 million people, but in reality, if we get just 5% of that on board, that would be a very significant accomplishment. You know, so we're not, you know, we're trying to be realistic in our targets. And that also helps the momentum to keep moving, you know.
It's true.
I really, this has been a good presentation, I think. I thank you, Brother Nino and Sister Aisha, for your input.
Yes, we welcome you to the campaign. Please join us.
Yes.
And if you want to contact me or Baba Jiwe, find our information in the chat. And yeah, we're at war and we're ready for war, really. You know, essentially. We have all we need.
I'm looking forward to hearing from some of you. You know, the first step will be set up a meeting with myself and Brother Jemai. As I said, Brother Jemai was he was there at the beginning of this whole campaign, so he's like an integral part of the history of the Pan-African Federal Movement as it's an originator of the movement. You know, so
he's the Secretary General, yes,
and he is the Secretary General of the international body. So, you know, we're moving forward, and we look forward to seeing more of you in the future and hearing from you. Okay. Any more questions? Any? You see any more questions?
No, I don't see any more.
All right. So I guess we can conclude the presentation at this point.
Yeah.
It's what, 1:15. Okay, so it was great. We had some extra time. I'm glad we were able to get some extra time.
Definitely. I don't see anything else in the chat. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you all, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Without further ado, I'm going to Nemo's calling me. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello? Nemo. Oh, maybe that was a mistake. Okay.
Okay.
Without further ado, thanks everybody. Peace.
Thank you.
Well. Black Power.
Black Power.
All right.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Sorry. Are we done?
Oh, okay. No, I'm here. Yeah, we're done. I think there's no more questions, and we're exiting out. Okay.
Yeah, but I want to say this one thing too. Sister Aisha.
Yeah, I'm here.
You know, one thing that makes so much sense that I feel like Baba Jumai had to like drill in my head. He said that we have a lot of organizations that are solving problems that are the effects of the actual problem.
Right.
And he was like, the UAS is the solution to the cause of the rest of your problems. So I feel like, and trying to, when I was like, I'm reading the Federalist papers right now, and I'm trying to understand like federalism, and one of the things, the key things that stood out when I was reading Black Africa, and Diop was saying in his interview to Carlos Moore, he said, African states, to federalize, you're going to have to give up certain autonomies.
Mm-hmm.
And when asking a question like, yo, this is such, the problem is clear, right? This is the idea, it's a good idea. Like, what would stop people from joining a confederacy or joining a federation or a coalition or like working in groups? Like, what would stop people from doing that? And I think the answer is Black people don't want to give up individual autonomy and work with other Black people. Because when you work in a group, to make the group work, you have to put the group's best interest over your individual best interests.
Absolutely.
And I don't think Black people, the current ones that exist right now, like not all of them, like the ones that exist, like the ones that are in the market, right? The ones that are operational, like the adults, they haven't been indoctrinated to think about life in a certain way. So I think, so yeah, that's what I've gotten with it. Like, these older people haven't been indoctrinated. Yes, you can be Pan-African on the outside and Pan-African, but on the inside, the way your mind really works, the way you problem solve, the way you think about things, you haven't been indoctrinated to have an Afrocentric worldview. And it stops you from accessing certain, I guess you call them political realities. So we really got to invest, and really big up organs that are dedicating themselves to political education. One of the organizations is Holla. Like, we really gotta build momentum around these organizations, because
I agree.
These are the organizations that are planting the seed that is going to allow the United African States to, one, be like a thing, and then be sustainable.
Right.
Like Baba Jumai was talking about neo-colonialism and taking over the educational institutions in the countries. Like, we really have to do everything that we can to really establish solid education systems.
Right.
So yeah, now I'm just talking. I'm just building.
No, I agree. I mean, I think that.
So,
Would you say Baba Jiwe?
Yeah, Sister Aisha, I'm sorry. I didn't want to.
No, I mean, I think that that's what it boils down to. Like you said, we're not looking for people who are, necessarily marching down the street with a dashiki on and saying that means that they are aligned with with the work that we're trying to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, there has to be a way for us to mitigate and work on our individual development, work on our community development, but then also work on the larger development, which is us developing into a strong African nation. And so for me, I think I was talking to Baba Jiwe about this last night. It's like, we live in a multidimensional reality, and we have to understand and compartmentalize and work towards each project individually. You have to develop yourself. You have to develop your own consciousness. You have to develop your own education. You have to develop your own ideologies, your worldview. But then you work on your family, you work on the community. But all of this has to happen simultaneously. It's not like we have the time to just focus in on oh, well, I'm just going to work on myself for the next 20 years. That's not going to help us as a community develop, And so I think one of the things that I know that our ancestors did brilliantly is be able to work on multiple different projects simultaneously to achieve certain ends. And, we have, like you said, many of examples of how to do it, and political education is necessary. And as people become more conscious of the interconnectedness of the struggle, then they won't even question why it's necessary. It won't even be a question in their mind.
Well, can I respond?
Yeah.
I don't think that it's
so much wisdom, Baba.
I don't think it's so much a question of education. There's such a dearth of integrity in this world that we're in. Everything, politics, business, the arts. So every institution of society nowadays is driven by money and greed. Now, I think that the only solution is that when you can come up with a leadership that has enough integrity to put the needs of the people before their individual greed. Integrity of governance. That's one of the missing ingredients, because this is how the neo-colonial leadership becomes leadership. They get bought out.
Absolutely.
They get bought out with money. And that's very hard to, money can be a very hard thing to turn down when it comes to you in suitcases. And I think unless there's that integrity within the heart and mind of the leadership, it's always going to be a problem of having a compromised leadership. So that's how I see this thing. Integrity has a lot to do with it. And you have to be prepared to forego your own personal pleasure and wealth for the betterment of the people that you're supposed to be governing. And I always go back to Fidel Castro. He's one shining example in my mind of a leader who had that kind of integrity. And this is why he was able to be successful and stay in power for so long. He had that kind of integrity. He could have sold out. There certainly have been many attempts to get him to sell out, but he had too much integrity to sell out. And I think this is the ingredient that we're looking for in selecting our leadership, integrity. That's all I can say. I've seen too many instances of lawyers being, you hire a lawyer to help you in your fight against the landlord, and you think you're ahead of the game, and the next thing you know, he disappears. What happened? The landlord paid him off. This happens very often, that the leaders just get compromised by their own personal greed. So anyhow. Wow. Okay.
I think that's a big one.
Anything else? Oh, we still have people in the room, huh? Okay.
Yeah, it's 21 people in here. Yeah.
Thank you. I see Asukile. I see you, Asukile, man. It's good to see you back.
Do you think HBCU is collaborating with universities and other institutions in Africa regarding comprehensive research, cultural exchange, think tanks, and infrastructure development is an important and durable and tangible? Perhaps HBCUs across the board are not heavily involved with African countries, and associated institutions are missing piece.
What is the HBCU?
Historically Black college. So, did you go to HBCU, Nemo?
Like Howard, Morgan?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's important in development of an infrastructure, but I'm curious about the infrastructure question. Infrastructure of what?
It's I think this is an important point, because this is you know, for many, many years, the corporations, the corporate world has typically been buying off the best minds from the black colleges. And
Right.
again, it's the same thing. They come with money, they come with scholarships, they come with offering you all of this success in the corporate world. And this is the way they're able to buy off the best minds of coming from the schools. It's a brain
But there are collaborations with African universities. Azupile says there are collaborations with African universities. However, there could be more, and they need more resources.
Right.
I agree. I think that a cultural exchange or think tanks or research would be great, you know, to collaborate between African universities and HBCUs. I know Dr. Carr is at Howard, but yes, we need it, and I feel like that should be something that is doable.
Well, I think that's
important.
It's important that it work, that we do have that.
I think that's one of those things that should be on the agenda, and that is sending a team to these universities to talk to them about PAFM.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that. Baba Jiwe, we talked about that.
We talked about everything. We talked about everything.
We definitely. So the question is not, it's not if, it's just when. So, you know, and as we expand, that's why we are here right now, is that we want more people to join the movement. So it's just not 3 of us in New York State that's trying to take on this type of, you know, venture. And so, yeah, I agree that it's something that needs.
I mean, there's a DC coordinating committee.
Huh?
There's a DC coordinating committee.
Oh, yeah.
There's a DC coordinating committee. The PAFM is present in Baltimore, Baba Imhotep, and I think.
Well, we know we talked about us being the standard, Nemo. So we have to set this, you know, and we can also work with
New York,
yeah. I mean, we've got to start. We set the standard in terms of collaborating with the other, you know, coordinators as well. So.
Right. Yep. Implementation. Yep. Okay. Yep. I see.
Okay.
Sister Stella's here. Maybe that can start.
I'm about to head out, so I don't see any more questions. Direct questions.
Sister Stella's she's our newest committee member, actually. Sister Stella Magloire. She talks about homeschool. Maybe that can start with homeschools. Which is also something that we're pursuing right now, actually. Yeah.
Jumaya is saying goodbye. Okay.
Okay.
And so, guys, peace and love to everyone. Thank you for attending. Again, if you want to reach out to any of us, we're all available. I think our information we put in the chat. And then also Brother Baba Jumai and Baba Azukile also put their info
awesome.
There. Have a good weekend.
Okay.
Black power.
All right, Nemo, are you going?
Yep.
Okay.
Peace.
I'm out. Okay, everybody. We'll talk.
Just putting my